It's not the first lecture I'm giving, but it's a great ambience to be here. So thanks for joining today. We're going to talk about decarbonization and do as a bit of introduction. So why is VMware here? VMware is an IT supplier. We do software, smart things. We virtualize servers, but you don't care about that. The only thing I want to give you is that in 2018 we did a measurement together with IDC, where they calculated that we have avoided 1.1 billion metric tons of CO2 by using our technology, which I think that's a good legacy to have, and so that equals to about 3% of the global emissions. And from legacy we go to today or yesterday. So what we're actually doing, the introduction said already planting trees, and we've been doing that as well.
Imagine the Earth's ecosystems are like an OS. Scientists around the world have confirmed the system is broken. Over the last 50 years, 60% of our ecosystems have been degraded and destroyed. What if there was a technology that could protect, even restore the environment, could clean the air and water, shelter wildlife, empower communities, and provide jobs, even help reverse climate change? That technology exists. It's called a tree. And when you put lots of trees together to restore the environment at landscape scale, it multiplies the positive impact. And it's not just theory. Some really smart people figured out how to quantify the economic, social, and environmental value of these trees. And now we can show that landscape scale restoration generates 33 times the initial investment. That's a great ROI. That's why we've partnered with Restore the Earth Foundation to plant 1 million acres of trees, because we believe in putting back more than we take. Let's reboot the Earth. Spread the word. Help us plant trees.
So that's our legacy. That's what we're doing right now. That's what we're doing already for the last years. And what we're proud of, to be good global citizens, to leave the Earth behind better than how we found it. So that's what we try to do. And for us it's easy, because we are a software company. We don't produce, we don't have production lines. We only send an email with a license key to someone. You can use it and do something smart with it. So we don't have production facilities. But we want to be an enabler. So we are in the Odyssey to take it up a notch and said, okay, how can we do this DNA that we have of being a facilitator, building bridges between enterprises and customers, to do the next big thing. And the next big thing is to see how we can tackle the CO2 challenge by connecting more things together in a smart way to incentivize not just industries and have this big trade emissions going on the background, but also take it to the customer. And in the Netherlands, people that follow it, there's a new guy starting at the tax office, and one of its targets is to start with a CO2 tax. So we challenged them to see if that's a good idea. So we invited them to join in the hackathon. They're still on the fence. We're waiting for them to see if they can grasp the ideas to take it up a next level. So what we tried to do, the challenge to create an accounting framework, and so to combine those things. So we are working with the likes of the Deloittes, the accounting firms, to come up with a framework system that we combine the data that's already gathered, because there's lots of footprint reporting going on. There's lots of startups that do that, there's lots of companies that do reporting, but it all ends up in different pockets and we can't have a global view on that. So we want to create a transparent framework to do that, run that on an infrastructure that we can provide so you don't have to worry about that, and have a common language and data integration points to get it all started. So I think we have a very good choice of making such a thing a reality, but we need the creativity of people that are the experts in these specific fields to chip in and do this together with us. So, context, like I said, the EU ETS, the energy trading frameworks, Frank Timmermans is wanting to change 100 billion of money in the energy trading scheme. So what if we could just take a piece of that and use that as an incentive system to incentivize citizens to do the right choice? And if they can do the right choice and spend those incentives also by either planting a tree or buying the products from companies that do the right thing, that are presented in this framework as good companies, then we can make it a flywheel. And that's what we all need to get to all the goals that we set, and like we're working on for the 2030 goals as well. So the impact will then be that we unlock these things, and that people that saw the speech of Mark Buckley this morning, I don't think I have to add anything to that. This is just what we want to do. So this is the challenge board. You can find us up there on the stairs on what we try to do. And with that, I'd like to invite Nicola over. Do we have a hand mic here as well? Yeah. Okay. To explain a bit about the things we're doing here. So please stand up.
Yep. So how many of you have heard of science-based targets? Okay, great. Well, Science-Based Targets is a consortium of non-governmental organizations like the World Resources Institute and CDP, which is formerly the Climate Disclosure Project. And what they're trying to do is they're getting companies, public companies, to sign up to publicly commit to setting science-based targets. And what I mean by that is reducing their carbon emissions in alignment with the Paris Climate Accord of keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees C. So this is a very, very hard goal. And companies don't like to make public announcements unless they're sure they can get there, or unless they're highly motivated. They feel some business need to make that announcement. And the beginning of last year, 2019, there were about 400 companies signed up for these science-based targets, which was quite a bit, actually. And the end of last year, there were 750. And there's probably about 5 to 10 joining each week now. And I would say these are very, very hard goals to meet. Because you can imagine if you're a business and you're growing, normally that means your carbon emissions are going up. And these companies are committing to reducing their carbon emissions at a significant pace every year to be in alignment. And not only their own internal operational carbon emissions, but that of some of their supply chain as well. Very, very hard goals. And they're doing it. They're making them publicly. To give you some idea, these are not your small companies. These are large global companies, and they're cross-sector. So they're in every country around the world, in every sector. And so this is a strong movement. This is something that kind of came up in probably the last 2 years. It's a very significant trend with respect to businesses taking action on climate change and reducing carbon emissions. I can tell you right now, so VMware is actually, I didn't put, our logo's not up there, but VMware also committed. And I can tell you, pretty much none of these companies know how to do that. And they are looking for solutions. They're looking to suppliers and other companies to help them reduce those carbon emissions. And so that's a huge market for anybody who's coming up with decarbonization solutions. Not only that, but that's sort of your, the buyer's market, right? There's also the investor market. Michael Bloomberg, he started this organization called the Task Force on Climate Financial Disclosures. And what that means is investors are starting to recognize the risks that companies have around climate change. The risk because they're carbon intensive or energy intensive, the risk because their supply chains are vulnerable to the effects of climate change, the consequences of climate change. And also there are companies out there, actually like VMware, that have opportunities around climate change because our software, for example, can help companies reduce their carbon emissions. So companies that are carbon unintensive and that have solutions to help these other companies reduce their carbon emissions. So renewable energy companies, for example, electric vehicle companies, investors are actually looking at them to invest in, and they're looking to divest from companies that have a lot of risk around climate change. So these are significant movements in what I call the capitalist system, in the buyer's market and in the investor community. And they're out there looking for solutions now. So this is almost the flywheel effect now, because you've got the financing behind the solutions now, and and you have a buyer's market. So this is, I think, the headwinds, the tailwinds now that we're working with.
Okay, cool. You can keep the mic.
Oh, keep the mic.
You can take it. You can take it with you, because we are gonna announce the panel. And since you have the mic, you can introduce yourself and your role, what you actually do. So why are you here?
Right. Yeah. My name. So Nicola Peill-Moelter. I'm the director of sustainability innovation at VMware, and what I'm trying to do is use VMware's technology, which is already helps customers be more sustainable, to drive even more impact through eliminating waste in the IT infrastructure and in digital transformation. Okay,
any special thing we need to know? Any pet project you're excited about, you're currently doing?
Well, I call it the zombie project. The idea is there are lots of zombies in our, if anybody's in IT knows what a zombie is, but I just say take out your phone and how many applications you have on your phone that you haven't used in a year. Those are zombies, okay? And there's the IT infrastructure is rife with useless, unused, unmanaged infrastructure and even virtual, and it's only going to get worse. So my project is to have VMware build the solution to help the companies around the world eliminate that waste.
Okay, cool. Can you give the mic to someone else you like?
My name is Frank Hartkamp. I'm from RVO. It's a part of the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and my focus is to work on industries reducing CO2, and special focus is on the ICT industries itself. On two ways. They use, of course, electricity themselves, lots of electricity, and otherwise the implementation of ICT means often making things more efficient and reducing CO2 elsewhere. So.
Any special pet project you'd like to share?
Well, we have a little time, I guess. So
no, we have time.
I have lots of projects I've been working on.
I'm asking for one.
But well, one of amazing project I work together with Willem at the moment with the Amsterdam Economic Board is on the issue of idle state of servers, and we calculated the amount of electricity spoiled by only idle working servers, which is huge, and it's the amount of the electricity use of the Dutch railway system.
Yeah.
So.
I said you're going to be friends. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Michiel Heij. I'm team captain and co-founder of socialtec. We participated in the Odyssey Hackathon last year for the inclusive banking track. We won, so hooray. Ever since April last year, we've been hacking away on our concept. Basically, as a company, what we do is we look at problems, global problems, big problems, and we see if we can draw the certain aspects of the problem. We can see if we can solve them by incentivizing people and stakeholders of the problem in the right way. To make it more concrete, what we built is an economy, a social economy, where everyone can participate, because in the current economy, you need money to participate. Now, in our project, it's called GiveO. Everyone can participate. And the beauty is that it's not just your time and your resources or your products with which you can participate in this economy. It's also your ideas. So if you have a really great idea for your community, then you can crowdsource resources from other people in your community, which could be just people volunteering, man hours, materials, or certain skills. And these projects are built by the community for the community. And the best part, which is really the question that I got asked the most, it's nice for you if you start out with a challenge. You build something, is what's your business model? We have a really nice business model for allowing companies to participate to these projects as well. So from the company perspective, we are the go-to platform for CSR, which is corporate social responsibility. If you, as a local baker or a local pizzeria, you can support your community by putting input in our economy, and it will generate social value as an output. So that's my project.
Well, that's great. And so it's pretty obvious why I invited him to the panel, I think.
Yeah, well, I like to think about big problems with our team, which have multiple stakeholders, and try to find the right incentive mechanisms for everyone to get a win. It's like Mark Buckley said, we have to go the other way. So we have to find a way for everyone to start moving ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Talia Klein. I work for Digital Asset, which is a startup based in New York looking at how enterprises and startups can leverage blockchain and smart contract technology to build solutions. Should I answer?
Yeah, so
my favorite
what,
exciting
what is your coolest current project?
Coolest current project. So I come from the financial services world, so we're looking at how do we apply lessons learned from the banking sector with blockchain to the rest of the world. Probably the thing I'm most excited about right now is we're working with a company on looking at how to track seafood, which is outside of my comfort zone, but very, very important. And the more you learn about fish, the more you realize how important it is.
Okay, cool, thanks. So first question I have for Frank. So Frank, why are you in this panel? Why are you a stakeholder? What's your interest? What are you looking for?
Well, maybe just because you asked it, but
of course.
When you thought about the idea and how blockchain could help this idea, it reminds me of the idea I had myself at the early start of my work at the office more than 20 years ago. Then when every consumer would have his own CO2 budget and had transparent choices to make in the products to choose, then you can, in the end of the year, you can have leftover of your budget, and you can sell it to another who has too low amount of CO2 budget for its activities, and then you get a better understanding of the choices one should make. For at the moment, most of the choices you make, you want to make the right choices, but in the end, most of the time you don't know if you made the right choices to respect of pollution and to CO2. So, and 20 years ago there was not a technology to make all these calculations in an economical way, but now we are at the brink of a new time where this transaction cost could be very low, and so I'm very enthusiastic about the opportunities. Yeah, so this is why I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Michiel. So, how do you see what we try to achieve here on carbon can connect to your experiences? What can we learn from the pitfalls you encountered in your startup? What we should avoid here, and what can we learn from you?
Okay, that's a great question. So it comes down to creating a solution that fits multiple people. I think that's really the essence of it. You can try to create a solution for one party, but if you have multiple stakeholders in your concept, it will be better. The more people that are enthusiastic and caring for your project, the higher rate of success you will have. I think for everyone here, we are unique because we are part of this movement that acknowledges the problem, but are also in a unique space to do something about it, because we are given an opportunity with our skills to participate in this ecosystem. So, and it's really great that VMware takes a leading role at this and sets a challenge, which doesn't necessarily means that you have to stick to the challenge, because in my experience from the previous hackathon, we kind of ditched 50% of our challenge definition, but we still won because we found out something that is better than what was expected of us. Yeah. So I would recommend think outside the box and imagine something that works even better than what is expected from you in the context that is given, because we're all conditioned in a certain way, and if you can overcome that, if you find something novel, something new, then that's really something that can contribute to the whole aspect. So that, I think that's,
yeah. That's also why in this challenge, I think that our challenge is one of the least prescriptive ones. It's lots of things are open. There's lots of room for creativity, for your input. So we don't have a lot of guardrails. Everything's possible to make the impossible, because this is such a huge problem. We can't figure out the guardrails even, so why should we give them to you? So therefore we challenge you to say, okay, come bring your creativity, bring your brightest minds, and chip in to figure out how we can best do this. And our possible best outcome is to have, from the 5 teams, 5 things, 5 ideas that combined make the solution and make an all-inclusive thing about that. I think that's the dream we have about going into this challenge, to see how we can make something that works and takes the best pieces out of these ideas and incubate that, make sure we find the right stakeholders to make sure it happens. Because we're not doing this just for the fun of innovation. We're doing this because we want to actually achieve something. That's why a large corporation like us, with our partners from DAML and from Boomi, are joining this game, because we think we can make a difference on the technology part in supporting all of that, but we really focus on the challenge and what we want to achieve there.
So if I return the question, Willem, you're incubating the teams that are coming out of the hackathon as well.
Yes, that's the intent. That not for ourselves to do that just ourselves. We, of course, if there's a good idea and we see reason to do so, we want to incubate that. But we want to attract stakeholders. You saw the logos on the slide that Nicola gave. We have connections to all of those.
That's great, yeah.
So we also want to make sure that we use that movement to also bring this message to those people and see who can be attracted as stakeholder as well. Like I said, in the RVO, for example, maybe you can elaborate a bit on what RVO can do to incubate this in research or things like that you see as a possible future?
RVO is quite a large organization, over 4,000 people working on several locations in different sectors, like industries, agriculture, water, science, trade, and also international trade on all subsidy schemes for innovation, and also lots of networks and knowledge. So for every idea which goes to which has interest in innovation or environmental issues or trade, you can always contact RVO, and most of the time it will bring you some goods, some knowledge, some extra budgets or some new contacts. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. Talia. Let me check the timing. We're good. Is there something that you want to add right now, or should I pose a question on you?
You can pose a question.
Okay. Maybe you got something, brilliant things in your ideas. Okay, no, I need to chip in. So this one. Okay, so what I'm seeing currently is the energy, the carbon emissions trading going on. Lots of things on energy trading. So trading platforms is close to the expertise on what you're doing. So what opportunities you see, what challenges you see if we want to bring those things also into consumers and applications toward end users, where it becomes multiplied in the number of endpoints.
Yep. So like I said at the beginning, digital asset, our early DNA was around financial services. A lot of us come from the banking industry. And I think so DAML is our smart contract language. It's open source and can be used on any blockchain platform, including, of course, VMware blockchain. And as we think about DAML being an asset agnostic smart contract language, we can think about how it could be applied to carbon emissions from the source. So as Nicola mentioned, being able to actually track which type of companies, let's say, are, or which companies specifically, what their carbon emissions are, and how can we make informed decisions in that way as a consumer. So if I wanted to know, if I was buying a cell phone, which company is actually having more or less emissions, and how I can be empowered to make that decision as a consumer. We're looking at ways to do that on a peer-to-peer level. But then also looking at from a CO2 emissions, I think Frank mentioned this, but trading on the carbon taxes and carbon credits. And if we enable that on smart contracts, we can actually track that back to the original source. So we really bring together all of the different players in that life cycle while removing any barriers to entry or the intermediaries involved with that.
Okay, cool. All right. Anything else from the panel that you'd like to share before I open it up?
Yeah, I think really one of the biggest challenges to hack in this context is the user adoption. Yeah. To find something that is interesting enough for anyone to install on their mobile phone and to be updated, because no one wants to see how bad you're doing, right? You only want to see how good you're doing. If I'm doing a running app, well, it's a pretty idle app in my case. I only use it when I want to see when I ran and how much I did. So in this context, we need something that is usable for the end user. And I had a really interesting conversation with Mark Buckley from the keynote before, and he said he thinks in terms of hectares. That we translate a lot of stuff back to CO2 now, yeah. But you can also translate it to hectares and how much space you as a person need on the globe and what your actions imply on the space that you're taking. I think this, from a user perspective, is really much more interesting to visualize what your footprint actually is, yeah. Instead of the old paradigm where you are taxed or where you are limited. People don't want to be limited. People want to be motivated and they want to have a goal. And when I run, I want to go for this amount and I'm trying to get there, right? Yeah. So I think this is really one of the key things to hack. If you build something that everyone wants to have on their phone, then you're definitely onto something.
So that translates well in having the world as a place, as your home to be living in. Yeah, sure. So is the ambition then to have as much hectares possible or as little possible?
No, as little, I believe. Right. Yeah. But, okay. Mark quoted the famous. I think someone said sometimes that we needed five planets if everyone wants to live at certain lifestyle. Yes. So yeah, that's definitely not possible.
Yeah. And I think too on that, it's really thinking about how do we change our behavior and then put pressure on these companies to change theirs, right? If we're more aware and we can empower citizens to actually do that, then we can say, okay, Coca-Cola, if you were at our last panel, stop creating bottles with plastics that can't be recycled. Or, I mean, there's no recycling bins here, I noticed today. But supporting organizations to actually do that based on where we're putting our dollars and how we're spending our time and resources.
So if we translate into hectares, we might want to connect with the Peace Initiative to make sure that people don't want to grow a country with more hectares to facilitate it.
We shouldn't be competing on that level, but it's a inspiring guy, Mark. I had the pleasure of talking with him before, and the whole concept with him. The thing, and this again, these are not my ideas. I just spoke to him over a cup of tea. The thing is that your footprint could be translated to your family, but could also translate to your community or your city or your country, or maybe your business, which I don't think he mentioned, but in this context could work fairly well if your company, your employees, and the way your employees are sustainable in their personal lives contribute to your company's footprint. So these are all concepts to play with and to create the incentive mechanisms with.
I think I saw the mic going to Nicola already.
Just in case it was sort of hidden in the comments here, but really you don't want to depress people, right? Because nobody's going to use an app where they feel bad. So the idea is what's actionable that comes out of it. So is it something I can say, oh, I can improve, or my neighbors or my friends are doing better than me. How do I do better than them? So make it competitive, like gamify it, right? But have it actionable where people can feel good that they're making progress. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, in the end, I think people want to make the right choices. So when they know that they made the right choices, then that would be very helpful. Yeah. And the CO2 is is in numbers is not very connected to a personal personal lifestyle, but to know that when you have a choice between three, that one choice is better than the other two, that will bring so much to you to make those better choices and to have a better life in the end.
Yeah. So if the current reporting schemes, everything rolls up, so we can make choices based on what the producers or the companies we want to acquire goods from can be compared to do the right thing.
What I was thinking of, when you look in the Netherlands situation, in the industries there are only 12 companies who pollute 2/3 of all CO2 in the Netherlands. So when you look at this kind of numbers, then as a consumer, then you think, well, I don't have any impact on that. Yeah. But in the end, it's the consumers buying the products of those 12 big companies who made all this pollution happening at the moment. Yeah. So when you are more informed about what to buy from what company and when and how, it would help. Yeah.
Well, and also companies do not like to be at the bottom of some kind of ranking. You know, Greenpeace has had a huge impact. I don't know if you've heard of the trend of companies buying renewable energy for their operations. Yep. That started with Greenpeace. Greenpeace called out Apple, Google, Twitter, Facebook, the fact that the cloud was not white and fluffy, it was very dirty and fossil fuel powered. And those companies got on it right away because they did not want to be on Greenpeace's list. So that kind of public call out is very powerful.
Cool. All right. I think we can open it up to the room. Yeah? Anyone? Questions?
Can I get a show of hands for everyone who flew here? Awesome. Well, I mean, I just have to point out all of your flights would have gone without you on them anyway. So I think that there is a huge kind of emphasis to B2C consumer relationships on this, and I actually really truly believe that there is a B2B and other models that need to be really addressed for us to make serious change in this space. And there's one of the reasons why I was talking with a linguist on this exact issue, and also we're going to be good friends, on basically the shame that's associated with consumers and certain products. And the further shame you feel and the further you shame others into that, the less likely that shame is going to be effective at actually changing behavior. And so I'm really interested in also getting your guys' perspective about how B2B relationship, like how businesses will force their suppliers, force their other share or stakeholders to really change practices, and really curious to have some brainstorming on that.
Yeah. So anyone who'd like to answer that one?
Well, I did mention the science-based targets. That is the key thing about the science-based targets is, again, it's not just a company's internal operations, it's also that of their supply chains. So what we're seeing is that every company has supply chains, and every company is a supplier of some other company, so business to business. And what's happening is every company is now putting pressure on every other company to do something, to reduce their carbon emissions. So you're kind of having this ripple effect in that respect, yeah.
The point on shame, I think, is really interesting. So we're a relatively small startup based in New York, and for example, the fridge, right? We're stocking it with water bottles. And I said to the guy who stocks the fridge with soda and whatever, like, why do we need water bottles, right? We live in New York. We have great water in New York. Try our bagels. Right? Like, we don't need water bottles. We stopped buying water bottles. Other things, we have plastic cups. But we're 100 people. We don't need plastic cups. I think, but looking at that from to everyone else's point, like from a positive perspective of how can we more positively impact the planet, and how can we make change and steps in the right direction versus, oh, hey, water bottle guy, stop ordering the water bottles. Why are you so dumb and you ordered the water bottles in the first place, right? It needs to be a collective approach towards being better and also just educating people on it. Like, I had dinner last night with all the folks that we're working with, and I learned more than I think I could have if I had opened a book. So having those conversations and understanding how we're impacting the planet.
Yeah, we had Mark Buckley come up to our stand earlier, and he also said, well, I still like to continue to fly everywhere, but I want to be able to do that in a sustainable way. So let's make sure we facilitate that. So we keep innovating and move there. So I think we don't have to change everything. We still have some good things that we want to keep, but we have to think about it differently.
Yeah, the other guidance I would give you is we have a term called don't boil the ocean, meaning don't try to solve all the carbon footprint problems, right? In the world, just like there were 12 companies in the Netherlands that are responsible for most of the carbon, there are very few industries that are responsible for most of the world's emissions. It's energy, so whether that's electricity or heat, and then agriculture, transportation, and I think cement making. There's probably a few others, but I mean that captures, right? So how do you get to the essence of that at the consumer level or at the business level? Like how do you start going after those industries and affecting change? Because some of those, like the airline industry, to your point, is not going to be flying on biofuels anytime soon. So how do we help decarbonize the airline industry? Yeah.
Well, I saw this nice documentary about making a skyscraper, high building, not of cement and concrete anymore, but made of wood. And this has two opportunities. One is to capture CO2 in wood and then keep the wood as wood and not burn it after a while. And in the other way, you don't need all those cement and concrete, which is very dense in CO2. No. So when you can have this choice as a consumer where to live, and you can choose between a wood or a concrete skyscraper, then you have impact as a consumer at the end in what is happening.
Yeah. Okay.
Should we do one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Hey guys, thanks for the discussion. I found it super interesting. I'm just curious, because from my perspective, the biggest challenge for this challenge is to integrate consumers, actually. Because I think there's a simple, in environment psychology, my background is psychology, psychological research, there's a simple mechanism that as soon as people start paying for environmental things, the environmental values kind of become less important for them. Like, oh, basically I can pay €5 for my flight and now all is good, even though it really isn't. And I think you guys know more about why then there's damaging ozone or gases in the air than me, but I still think that this might be super interesting. And I've heard you mentioned the social comparison effect. How can you gamify it? How can you compare it to your neighbors? Or the decoy effect. If you have 3 options, one is better than the other 2, right? There are a lot of ways to play with it, but I'm curious to see how any team, or maybe how you would suggest to target the consumers and how to leverage this capability.
Anyone like to chip in?
Sure. So I think in blockchain land, we talk a lot about transparency and tracking and all that. And the more I learn personally about the issues of climate change, the more I'm incentivized to want to know answers to what I'm doing, right? Yeah. So as a consumer, again, if I have a choice between buying 2 different bottles of soda or even water, let's say, to understand the full effect of the supply chain, or I mentioned before the fish idea, right? If I can know that I'm buying fish from the harbor in New York versus the West Coast, what's the impact from a CO2 emissions perspective on that? Things like energy, right? In New York, we have one, in Manhattan, one energy provider. But there's other ways, since I've been in this space and have met with folks from that company, looking at how do we actually enable consumers to understand what they're doing with those choices. And I think there's a deep psychological piece in there, but I think that's also knowing that, what the effects of temperatures rising mean for me as an individual or my family. Yeah. And I think that's critical to think about.
And I think one of the key things to remember is that what we're talking about here is really a price on carbon. that up until now we've externalized the cost of carbon to society. And some, the European Union's put a price on carbon, but it hasn't really been that effective. And so what we're really saying here is that we're trying to shift the markets to decarbonize solutions. And the way you do that is multiple different ways. Right? You can regulate, you can put a tax on carbon, you can drive demand for decarbonized solutions, better products that are less carbon intensive. And so companies respond to that, right? So companies will respond to a tax on carbon because it increases their cost of goods. So they either have to absorb that or they have to pass it on to their consumers. And if their competitors are less carbon intensive, they don't have that disadvantage. Or if the demand is increased for decarbonized solutions, hey, that's a business opportunity for me. And going back to the investor example I gave, investors are now starting to see that a carbon intensive business is a risky investment. And now they're going to, the financing for those types of investments is going to slow. So it's not just saying the consumer has to say pay more money for a particular solution. It's just a matter of creating demand for, or reducing demand for carbon intensive solutions and driving demand for, so there's a whole system level effect happening here.
I see a final word of Michiel coming up on this part.
Yeah, I think it's an example of what you're saying. I was at a gas station the other day, and then I was paying, and the woman asked me if I wanted to neutralize some of my CO2. So really, the first thing that popped in my mind is, why isn't Shell doing this? Why am I paying for it? Why aren't you guys paying for it with the money that I'm already giving you? So there's an opportunity for business to take the lead, and I think you have to capitalize on that as an answer to your question.
Yeah, and thinking of inventing a new CO2 tax. For that example, you're paying already accijns on the gas you're paying. You already for your household you already also have energy tax already. So you're already paying energy tax, CO2 tax for those goods already. So we have to think differently to solve this. So let's move on and finish up on how we gonna get there then. So this one we had already. So we aim to put more in than we took out. So that's the basis of what we do and where we want to go. So if you look at stakeholders, so what are we looking for and what are we working with to want to do in this challenge? Work with government, with regulators, enterprises, of course, experts and accounting firms to make sure we also have something that's working. Because we can dream a lot here, but at the end it's got to work and it's got to be compliant, and somebody has to say this is okay, and because if we took rubbish data in, you get rubbish data out. So at some point we have to do it properly. So that's what we're looking for. Of course, the teams. So winning team will demonstrate an interconnected system where we can do all this. So making CO2 accountability as normal as paying taxes, but it shouldn't feel like paying taxes. It should be different. It shouldn't be paying a premium for that, like you just said with the going to the gas station of Shell. You shouldn't be calling for that. Thank you. So we don't want to take a premium. We want to make the responsible best choice the obvious choice. And finishing up with the technology, don't worry about the technology. VMware, Daml, and Boomi, we got you covered. We got scalable platforms. We got tons of engineering and smart people that figure that out. So we can make that work so you can focus on the solutions on top of that. And join us all tomorrow. If you're not tired enough tomorrow evening, join us for pizzas at 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock so we can discuss more. We will bring everybody together. We will order some food, and for people that can't get enough or want some free dinner, join us. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.